All right. Well, welcome to a restorative therapeutic session today. And so, what I want you to do is have your bolster up on a ramp. You're also going to have your blanket folded on top of the short end of the bolster. And that, as we come back onto it, we'll see how it feels. So, let's get into the first shape. We're going to start in cobbler's pose. So, you'll have your feet, soles of the feet together. You might have your feet touching towards a wall because you do want a wall for a good portion of the class today. We're going to use that. So if your feet kind of touch up against it, that's fine. They don't have to. But I want you to guide a couple of blocks under the thighs. So the blocks could be the second setting or they could be contoured, which I like to kind of pivot the block so it is supporting my thigh load, right? It is, it's kind of a thigh load that you're putting on the blocks. These thoughts come to mind only when I'm practicing. Okay, get a belt, buckle it up. Whatever kind of belt you're using, you want it connected so that this provides you with relaxation, right? The belt is providing you with a fixed hold on the bones. So you probably want it pretty big, huh? Scoop up your feet, do any back rounding for the moment to get your feet, and then certainly pull the buckle up near your hip, okay? So you can, if you have an emergency, you can get out. Okay. Slide the belt back so you can feel where the bolster is. You want the belt right a little bit lower than the bolster peak on your sacrum area. So it's around the eyebrows of the buttocks. Maybe it's a little lower for some people. I'm going to have mine kind of tucked a little bit because it feels good there. And then as I lower back, if you're one that likes sand on the feet, place it across your feet now. If you're one that likes sand on the chest, then take a moment as you push into your bolster or the floor and guide the perspective of arching through the spine. Okay, so noticing kind of possibly the temptation to move the knees higher or maybe lower if you want more stretch, but finding that all these props, the blocks and the belt and all the props under your spine are giving you that enhanced perspective on your respiratory reflection, right, on how you're breathing. So feeling how the feet are connected. I like to kind of float my feet a little bit up if I'm not touching the wall and just kind of feel the inner thigh kind of pulling, right? It's not like a acupressure, but you can feel if you were to lift your feet, this whole center vine of the body kind of activating in the circulation in the lymph here. So there's a little bit of response there. But utilize those blocks so that they don't kind of cut into you. They are supporting the edge of the bones. And if you don't want blocks, it's okay. You can always put blankets or pillows. And as I put the sand across the ribs, I set the sand either across or from heart to belly, whichever is easy for you. Okay, keep in mind, easy does it. So if the support of the props causes you to tense up more, then figure out how to access the shape with as much release as possible once you're there. So the arms are settled down. They're spreading out the chest gradually. So if I open up through the arms, I want the back of the hands to relax onto the ground. So just determine how far out your arms will be. And then let's gather our attention, letting our eyes perhaps close, or maybe you have an eye pillow centered at the eyes. And feel the attention to this inner space of breath, noticing that its contact is from the outside, right? When you breathe in, that's essential to have an outer connection, right? And then as you process that breathing, notice how you process the circulation of the breath in the front of the body. So there might be a lift of the abdominal motion, which is actually the diaphragm that's creating that movement that you feel. Strengthening the diaphragm, strengthening the breathing muscles. So let's arrive here for a few more moments. Just bring the attention to the place that we practice within. And not acknowledging that you're sharing the practice clearly with others with a guide, and see if you can really influence this shape with the props supporting you. And hopefully the sand is feeling a little bit lower in the front body. So if you have it on the torso area, the center body, as you progress in this, it will feel like the breath is lowering down the front body to the abdominals. And then as you exhale, it sweeps the lungs and moves back up towards the heart. So take a few more breath sweeps into the lungs, inhaling through the nose, physically feel. Exhale, empty the lungs, let it go. And even more essential, let the weight of your brain relax back. Maybe let your head nod. Now feeling the arms opening out and lifting off the ground, and then stretch both behind you. So you'll interlace your fingers at the roots and turn the hands inside out, stretching back. Okay, feel if you separate the fingers a little bit so they're not quite as pressed down to the roots, that might feel better for your wrist. Feel that reach of the hand, especially from the thumb part to the heel of the hand. That's a strange place to expand on. Right, we usually push into it with our hand on a countertop or getting something. It's squeezed or it's pressed, but now you're trying to kind of enliven that part of your palm from the webbing of the thumb and the index. Okay, and we'll reflect on that here. So as we release any grip with the fingers, you'll open out through the chest, let the arms lower down, and then take the sand off of your center. If it's on the feet, you'll be able to kind of scoot it off when we get out of the belt. But get a hold of your ball. If you don't have a ball, you use a block for the next one. So we'll unbuckle. And as you slide your feet in, and if you've got the sand, you just shuffle it off your feet. You're going to take the belt off. In fact, I don't think you'll need it for a while, so you might as well pull it away so it's off of your mat. And cross the right ankle to the left knee, and then push the block so they're off to the side yard. Add the ball to the upper outer left thigh. And the block over there on that side might be used in addition to the ball. So maybe just keep it off in the side yard in case you land on it. So push the ball into that left upper outer thigh and push it in enough that your knees tilt over to the right first. So you get a little rebound pushing. And then I want you to set your weight over to the ball. So let the knees tilt to the left and hold the right knee with the left hand. Reposition the ankle if you feel like it's going to slip off of the knee. And this is one where I don't think the ankle is, interestingly, right, when we push into our patella, usually it's not encouraged. Patella pushing is not encouraged, but with the foot on to that area, it's pretty comfortable. So, but I'm going to pull it a little bit higher than right on my kneecap. And as I hold onto the right leg, I'm connecting at the knee and I'm stretching into my right hip. Okay, so feeling where that circulation is into the hip, stretch the right arm, reach it back. Elongate through the torso. Okay, keep that range. Okay. We got a special guest coming to class here. All right. Okay, so you can feel your hip, I think, on this one. There's probably a little bit of hip energy. And when you do use this ball, I think smooshing it is a pretty clever way because we're trying to kind of control that movement of the hip, even on the left hip. So when I feel my knees go to the left side, the hip that I'm pushing down onto, the ball makes it so I don't really feel any negativity in my left hip. But there is kind of a beginning of energy in the right hip. Feel the right knee kind of pull towards you, come back in center, and then lift up the toes on the left foot. So you're flexing the bottom foot. And I want you just to take a moment where you use your block. You're going to press on the inside of that right thigh and try just to move the knee away. Remember, you don't have to push a kneecap at all, right? You're on the inside of that right thigh. And then feel when you lower the left foot down, if you haven't already, pressing so that inner right thigh feels the circulation. Palpate the leg by just monitoring, pushing with the block, and you're kind of pushing, digging, and lifting up the flesh a little bit towards the actual knee, right? The circulation towards the knee. So get a feeling here of that inner thigh. It's not quite a massage because the block is pretty stiff pressure. But take one more moment where you just push a little bit with the block and your hands pushing into it. Okay? And then putting the block down to the side. Feel both arms reach back overhead. So simple figure 4 pose, or we call this reclining pigeon pose, right? Because it is the same exact things as pigeon, except we're not pushing our knee into the ground. Okay, that makes it sound like that's not such a good pose, huh? But we're doing the variation. Now my knee is kind of motioning downwards. My hip is not exactly balanced. I can kind of wag my tail a little bit on this one. So when you shift the right knee almost towards your right side of your waist, then step the foot down, take the ball, and you're going to place it to the right glute medius. So I'm going to lift up my hips in a bridge pose, roll the ball under the right buttock, and then let the weight be on the ball and move the hips side to side. So you're wagging your tail. Make sure the ball stays on the right buttock, closer to the border of the buttock to the medius. And just see what it feels like when you have something under your back. It's going to be a little easier, right? The pressure's mild. But feel the arms kind of faint down to the side, let them go, and push and glide across those connective tissues on the right buttock. Okay? Affect the hip. You could hook the right ankle to the left knee again if you feel like that's a better massage, but we're just kind of warming up those tissues on that right side. Okay. All right, now come back center, place the ball, meaning your hips are centered. The ball is to the side of that right buttock to the floor, right? So it's not underneath it. The left foot crosses up over to the right knee. If you scoot down the bolster, that happens to me on this one. I'm going to just lift up and guide myself back so my spine has a nice arch. And then tip the knees left and right, give them a little bit of motion, a little bit of rebound in the joint, side to side. And just maybe feel how the right foot responds, if you actually can mobilize the bottom foot at all, or if it's kind of a stiff foot, right? Maybe wiggle the toes. And then as the knees shift to the right side this next time, push that ball in so that you have support and hold on to the left knee. And as you feel that hold, you're pulling. Now, if you don't have a ball, you could use like a towel, a rolled up towel or blanket that's about the same size. That would probably be better than a block stuffed in because that's pretty firm. So when you hold on, your left arm reaches back, and the weight, kind of the reflex of your body weight into the ball is important. Even if there's nothing called a weight reflex. So I'm just going to kind of move my ball a little bit down so that I feel when I lean into it that my right foot can relax on the bottom. my torso gets this kind of unique amount of circulation, kind of spontaneity right in my core musculature, because I'm surfacing my body up off of the, I'm lifting off of the flat ground with a bolster, so I'm getting a little bit of work there. And then I hold the left knee and I'm trying to just guide it to where I feel like it's a good sensation. I don't know if it's good, but I feel a stretch. I feel the circulation building across my hip layer, threading into my back layer slightly. But when you're holding, feel if you pull the leg towards the right or a little bit in towards your upper body. And just get a nice blend of those two worlds, across and then towards you. Breathing. You relax the face. Your left arm could be down by the side if that's a bother to the shoulder. But instead of just kind of posing work, your focus is on threading, relaxing the upper body, the chest muscles, and just enhancing that stretch of the breathing muscles purely by the shape of the pose. Doesn't take much more. Okay, now we let go of the knee, but we'll keep on this left thigh. So just kind of notice it was the side band that you could feel. Probably it landed right up in the hip. It wasn't like I was feeling this whole side. But a little palpation might be good. So when you come back in center, as center as you could be, you'll take the block on that left inner leg. I like the idea of my right foot flexing, lifting from the heel up to the toes, just get a little bit of flex, but it's taught both ways, foot down or foot the toes up. It's maybe a bother to lift your toes. So feeling as you press, the block is really helpful compared to something softer because it's really defines the pressure. So I try to find some, tissue here above, right over the muscle. And I'm trying to press into that and kind of fluff it up, right? Get some blood flow and circulation in the lymph flow here in my inner thigh. So I like to feel that movement kind of away from my hip joint up towards the knee, but you could also go the other direction. So if I was doing like a Swedish massage work, effleurage, I would be moving it back towards my groins, towards the heart area. But we're actually trying to get the connective tissue to loosen up. That's the goal here. Okay, get some physical, postural promotion. Okay, so once that inner thigh has had a little bit of ruckus in the adductor, could be kind of tight in there. Okay, so let's put the block aside and then we'll place the ball under that left buttock. Remember, you could have your foot crossed over, you can uncross the left foot, you decide. But feeling, just place the ball so it's right to the center of the buttock and then over towards the border would be as far as you go. And then let the hips go side to side. Arms could be passive, it could be active, reaching back. It's all up to you. And, maybe you cross that ankle over. Maybe you're kind of tired of having the foot crossed to the knee. You could kick the foot up in the air. Just feeling that circulation into that left hip, right? The muscles across the band of the seat. And that is going to be where we go. We're going to go up into a side stretch. So feeling the side stretch of the abdominal muscles. So just tip to the left side. Okay, now let's take the ball out first, things first. Take the ball out and roll to the left. And then I want us to come up and around back to sitting towards our wall or your wall. Okay, place the ball between the knees and get close to the wall. Okay, if you feel a little apprehensive about getting your feet up on it, you can always pull your bolster closer, see if something to kind of hold on to. It works. You can always put your blocks down by the sides of the hips, kind of put them up to the second setting. So I place that right to my hips here, okay? I prefer holding my legs. Okay, so when I lift up my feet, I got to get close enough to the wall that they can step up onto it. And you're going to focus simply on the ball, center of the knees, and squeeze into the ball. Okay, likely, even if you have medial collateral stuff going on, it's pretty likely this isn't going to feel any pressure, my hope, so that you're striving to create the strength on the side band of the legs, but it's pretty intense into the hip flexors. Okay, so bend the knees a little bit further, pull the feet, slide them down off the wall, squeeze the ball, and relax the grip. Do what you need to do. Maybe you lean down to your blocks, squeeze the ball. We're going to go about 5 times alternating squeezing. If you don't have a ball, you could put a block between them and just have something you're pushing into. That would probably work better than a towel, but a ball would be optimal. So squeezing, relax your hands. And let's go with a couple more. Squeeze. And hopefully you're breathing with the inhale, squeezing, and release. Okay, now last time, mild squeeze of the ball. Hold the legs, unless you're going for extra credit with the elbows on the blocks. Lift the feet up and grab a hold so that when you're holding the backs of the legs, you're actually holding with the palm under and scooping, kind of pulling the leg flesh towards the side. It's still attached, but you're pulling it out a little bit to the side. So as you push into the wall, the key is push the wall, push the wall. And then try to lift up the chest, breathe. Okay, if I let go of the legs to come into boat pose, I find my leg muscles kind of retract to where they were previously. So for me, I'm still training them to stay so that my knees are supported. I get good circulation around the knees. So I'm holding the underside of the leg and pulling up towards the side. Okay, so take one more breath here. Okay, keep the natural arch of the spine. Exhale. Okay, now bend the knees, slide down the wall, and then we're going to take the ball over to the left side of our mat. Place your block both onto the sides, and then just shift your knees side to side, windshield wiper. Okay, this will feel good. Ooh, on the hip flexor. So massage the glutes, windshield wiper side to side. Feel the feet spaced apart and that movement across the back of the hips. Okay. All right, now as you lean left, you're going to lean to the left side and then come back to your bolster and pivot the bolster so it's across the mat, horizontal. And we're going to set up for a side sage. We're going to do side sage and then take a break between one side to the next with a whole series of things. But I want you to let the first side be the left hip if possible. So we're going to take our blankets into a stack, and the block is an option. So you can have your blanket stacked probably about the height of your bolster, maybe they're a little lower. And the block goes to the back. And then you'll get a sandbag if you have one, or a bag of weight, and place that over to your left knee. Okay? And then I want you to take a moment where you get a feeling of this knee position. So my left thigh, it's positioned up so the knee is probably closer to the bolster than your hip bone itself, the top of the thigh, right? So you probably feel the knee pulls up higher. I want you to try to keep the knee closer to the bolster. The hip is close, but it doesn't need to be as close. So work with the feeling in the hip joint here. So you're going to lean to the left, and you're going to take maybe the ball to the right inner thigh. Try to go with inner thigh compared to just the knee today. See if that works. If you don't use the ball at all, that's fine. Okay. So what happens when you lean into it is your hip tries to get higher up than the knee, probably. I'm guilty. Okay. So when you lean into it, I want you to keep this left knee pulling up, parking near the bolster. Sort of like if you're doing pigeon pose, you're going to pull the knee upwards. So it's not that different. I mean, all these poses are the same thing, right? They just look different, but they're all about similar stuff we're doing. So my right leg reaches back, my left foot I'm going to try to scoot it over to line up with the knee. See if I can get some good alignment with this leg. And then taking the sand to the outer right thigh. You can ignore all those previous guidelines for the pose. Some of this extra stuff is a bit much, but you might like to just kind of feel what you could do with the legs that will enhance circulation. And if you lean in and you feel like the bolster is too low, there's part of the ribs that need something under them, you can add a blanket. You can use a round bolster. But as that right arm reaches over, you don't have to rush getting the hand to the block. But feel when that right arm reaches the movement of the breathing cycle here. So maybe just slow it down. Pause. Feel the arm reach between the bolster and the blankets. And maybe that upper hand is on the block, and maybe you decide to place it down on your side or even on the blanket or the bolster. Okay, so I find if I have my arm reaching, it actually feels pretty good on my neck, what I'm noticing on this one. And if I don't, I get a little strain in the neck. So this movement of the arm is kind of important for our neck circulation, but if it hurts, you don't do it. You just explore what you can do that's more peaceful with your right arm. And all the while, we're stretching out the side, right? We're doing a side stretch, really an extension of the abdominal muscles. Resting the face, maybe feeling if you can let your head rest a little bit more into the blankets. If the blanket's too high up, you can always slide one out. Great, relax your eyes. Gently stretch the in and the out breath. Okay, now when you feel that reach of the torso, the waist, all the center body has an interesting array of reaction here. And it also collects back into its center quite rapidly when you move the legs back in towards, like, let's say table pose, right? It also heals up pretty well, right? In the center body, there's just so much interaction with organs and muscles and corpuscles maybe. It's important, right, to notice that it does go back to its kind of its natural state as well. So we're working on expanding circulation of lymph, right? So we're trying to boost and optimize the circulation internally for these moments. Okay, and consider continuing to go slow, especially when we're researching these next poses. So once the right arm is done reaching, just let the right armpit chest feel like from the chest, armpit, shoulder blade, that's trying to open towards the ceiling. My head rolls on the blanket. Feels great. Okay, and if you were using a round bolster here, you could use a flat bolster under your head. Just know that. There's quite a few options. Okay, with opening the right arm. So, if your arm going overhead is pretty pinchy, right, you have trouble with that, you might find your arm out to opening the chest this way, even if my arm isn't that high, it really helps develop that current and circulation towards other things that are maybe difficult. So refresh the chest area here. Take a moment. Breathing. Okay, and then just let the sand, if it didn't already fall off, it will by now. Huh? So let the sand go and rotate back towards the bolster and take your ball away, push it away, and I want you to actually come around to hands and knees. And, well, actually, not quite hands yet. Okay, so putting the bolster onto the side, have a belt, so it's going to be on the other side of your space towards your, over the blankets for that moment, and then just stack up your bolster blankets over on the side. Okay, all right, got a block, got another one, got a belt over there towards the end of my mat. And then I want you to come into it. You'll have your block on each side of your mat. I want you to have the feet touch the wall. So the balls of the feet touch the wall. The hands stretch out wide. And round the back into cat, chin to chest. And arch the spine. Move your chin forward. Lift up your eyes. Stretch the face. And then as you enter that motion of spine flexing, maybe this one is good for you to let your eyes close as well and just feel that motion of the spine, that flexy spine. Chin to chest, inhale, arch. Okay. Now what's interesting is sometimes the shoulders get kind of crowded here. And so when you come back in towards the table, I want you to push a little bit away from the wall, let the hands walk farther forward, as far forward as they need so you can stretch your hip flexors and then lift up. Again, you can have your eyes open or closed. You know, sense that spine's direct strength. Okay, try to lift up out of the shoulders. Come back to table. And let's take a step forward into a right foot. So I'm going to put my blocks up pretty high for this one because it does make it a lot easier to step. So you'll take your right foot, stepping forward between the blocks. As you reach, it's interesting, and higher up the arms, right, when you're moving your leg in between, there's just a bigger gap, even if the block is just one height up, one more notch. So when I lunge, if my back knee is unhappy, I can put a blanket easily under my knee. But I want us to take the reach of the back foot. So you lift up the knee, and you might have to reach the heel a little bit farther down the wall so that you really are stretching the left foot. So the right knee has that lunge, a little bit of arch in the spine. Okay, let's be here for a few moments. So I want you to have this kind of mediocre height lunge, okay? So the leg is not as high as you can go as far as your torso, right? Your middle, you're holding on, but feeling that progression of stability into the legs and the hips, the muscles, okay? It's pretty plain. Okay, now as you extend the right leg, you get a little bit more ripple of length in the hamstring. I want you to pivot that back foot so my heel's going to lower down the back foot as much as I can. So if I can't get the heel to the floor, which is kind of pretty normal on this one, you're going to have it kind of launched up on the wall a little bit, or you could turn it out. But I'm a little bit straight on this one. I want to have my knee health all supported. So I don't want to contort my knee at all. So I'll have my back heel up. I want you to keep that length in the torso. So take the blocks in a little closer besides your right foot. If you're really forcing into your wrist, lift up your chest a little bit. Bring your right hand to the sacrum and turn the waist to the right. See if you can rotate. Caution, right, with the left hand's pressure. So pretty normal. I'm going to put a lot of weight into it. So what I like to do is sometimes put my left block a little out to the left side, push down through the fingers, the finger pads, versus the heel of my hand. So I have to recruit my core band a little bit when I rotate. Of course, it's going to be a momentary pose before I lapse, huh? Okay, breathe, torso turns, and then turn back towards the floor. Good job. Okay, take the left foot, step it to the right, And as we take this forward fold, let's get our belt. Okay, place it behind your feet, well, maybe behind your calves. Hold on to it, step the feet out a good hips distance, and then reach your arms back, go over the rear. Maybe you make it over the rear. And as the hands slide out on the belt, you're going to stretch out your chest, shrug the shoulders back, launch your weight into the whole foot. Whole foot, feel the bottom of that foot. And then let your head bow down and keep the arms moving over the back, far back and over, maybe over your head, maybe it's right above, right, the shoulder blades. So movement is okay. It's proper here to get a little bit of motion. And if you don't like using the belt, you can hold the backs of the legs and pass. Okay. Okay, now feel the arms overhead. See if you can let go of the belt. And then as your hands reach the backs of the legs, you're going to grasp a hold closer towards your heels. And then feel the hips lift up, your crown of your head towards the floor. Excellent circulation to the brain. Let your head maybe nod a little side to side. Yeah, go with the side to side nod. It's a little bit different than our daily postural, chin up or chin down motion. All the chin ups we do are chin downs. So as your head progressing that movement, it's interesting for the motion in the head and the neck, kind of vestibular. So feel when you come back into center, all that circulation to the skin cells of your face. Should feel kind of funny. It's an interesting feel. Okay, now bend the knees. Take your hands onto the two blocks. Okay, remember we had a shift here in our blood pressure, so you do want to keep kind of mediocre lunge. Right leg stretches back. Take a moment to reach into that right leg. Heel's going to be propped up on the wall. So this side, you probably start out with a higher hip, I bet, because you stepped back into it versus from back to forward. So feel that height ratio of the right and the left hip, and let's kind of capitalize on it a bit. So my back foot, I want to make sure they're in two different tracks. So I kind of look down to them. And then I like to feel first that heel up and that lunge power. So the circulation that I start to pour into my hands, the poor hands don't need that. So I've got to kind of, maybe you can make a fist on the blocks and use your legs a little bit more. I know the things we do to take it easy, huh? In our poses. So you do what feels okay. If you need to put more weight in your hands, that's okay. But it's probably better to work on muscles versus, the joints. You don't want to tear those up. Okay. So now let's stretch our back heel a little farther down towards the base of the wall. Okay, don't worry, it's hard to get to the base of the wall. So I'm at the lower part of the wall, my heel is reaching down, the calf is stretching. I feel it, and then I want you to straighten the left leg a bit. So if the heel lowers down because your left leg's straightened as well, the body mechanics are working. If it's stiff, you're pretty muscular there. So just if it's bound up, it's bound to happen to either be a little bit stiffer for most of us on this in the calf. Okay. Now, you're going to have your right hand on the block again. You can make a fist. It's probably kind of hard to spider your hand on the little block top. If the block was lower, it's still not a big, it's like a balance beam, isn't it? It's just not a big surface to spread out the fingers. So the fist works well, the palm is okay, but when you bring the left hand to the sacrum, really focus on that connection from the calf up through the right side of the torso. It kind of spins around into the ribs, and caution, right? If you feel like you're going to flop over, then I would put your hand back on the other block, take your right hand to move the block a little out to the right side, just a little bit, so you have a wider base, and then turn to the left. Okay, feeling the left leg pressing. I'm trying to straighten this left leg. Breathe. Rotate. Okay. Okay, now if the back heel is a little bit up, that's kind of in some way helpful coming up here. So we're going to lower the left hand down to the block and step. Organize the hips. Step the right foot to the left. Okay? And bring your hands up onto above the knees on the thighs and come up and turn to the wall and bring your palms on the wall and take a wall press. So I'm going to move my feet back so the stretch is in my chest. Okay? So take the moment here when you're in this forward fold that you have both hands and you can either take the feet wider or about hips distance. It's up to you. I really like this stretch. I don't focus on how it looks. I just keep aiming into better feeling, more wide stance, more spread in the shoulder joints. It's a really interesting shape for circulation, isn't it? Okay. All right, so let's take this downwards a little bit. So we're going to push into the wall, walk the feet about hips distance. You can turn the hands out at the wall and then just lift the chest, move the hips a little bit forward. Only so far that they can go with the heels down, huh? Okay. All right, good. Okay, turn so that your back is at the wall. And we'll sit at the wall a little bit here and we'll take a forward fold and we'll walk our hands on forward. Okay, coming back on down. So feet scoot back to the wall. We lower down the knees. Take your blankets. And then if they're a big heap, right, you'll kind of have to toss them to the other side. Taking your block above those, your bolster into its side. And first things first here, let's bring our hands on the other side of the bolster and let your hips stretch on the bolster. So the front of my hips are elongating here. If this is too much action for you after what we just did, you can always come down to your elbows on the blankets, just kind of pull them in. And this might feel good too, right? To have my blankets in under my elbows and press into my elbows and stretch out through my torso. Okay, I'm fine with this range for a few more seconds here. Okay, so noticing where there's a little bit of pressure sometimes in our back from this shape with our feet pushing, lift up the chest, breathing. Yep. It only helps. And now as we lower down the chest, let's try to come into a side sage, this perspective, okay? So we'll shift back to table. Remember what pigeon pose is like, how we get into that. Let's get into this pose like we would pigeon. So we're gonna bring our right knee towards the left side of the bolster. We're gonna sit on the right hip, okay? Left thigh stretches back, ball on the inner side. You know, probably on one side, if you use the ball, you have a tendency, whether it's thigh or it's knee. So try to keep it equal on each side. And then we come back on down. Okay, after getting a little bit of blood flow and heart, now we can come back to kind of a pure, deep stretch, right? So we've got that reach in the left hip. You can move the ball around if it doesn't work for you. Be sure that you can feel the right knee close to the bolster. And keep in mind, you could scoot your right foot farther over to that right side like it's a scissor kick. We used to do those in this pose with scissor kick. So the right leg would almost straighten out. Okay, so you could play with that. So the left arm is in a reaching pattern over the side of your face to the block. And keep furthering that range. Okay. Even if you can get an adequate stretch and you just kind of lay there, you know, let your spine and the ribs. Feel the influx of breath. And don't overstress the neck here. So for me, sometimes when I'm on the side away from the screen, I'll grip my neck a little bit to kind of pivot. So I have to actively let my brain go, let it relax. Feel that reach through the left arm. Just simple in and out breath. And feel the ribs expand. Okay, so let's get some interaction with the leg inversion here. So let's open up the left armpit chest. So this area gets kind of flooded with circulation, the chest walls, the pec, into the armpit chest, the inner arm. Yep. This area might feel like it has some good option here, some opportunity to be influenced by that circulation into the heart. Yeah, it can be really stiff in there. Our poor heart. So you can rest your brain back. And one side of the neck might feel really different on this one. You might have to kind of schmooze with it a little bit. Let your head nod a little side to side. Shoulder roll. Okay. Now the upper body's received a good amount. Not the most it could, but it's had some good circulation. Good amount of flushing. So when we come around, we're going to start to introduce more circulation there just by where our body weight is going to be. So just slide the sand over to the side yard and just feel where the ribs roll right. And as you come up, let's take a seat on the bolster. And I like this one to have my feet. I'm going to try to touch the wall on this one today. So if you've got an extra blanket, you can put it off to the side. Okay. And then if you got your blocks, the thing you're going to need is your belt and your, I'm not sure about the sand, but you'll need your ball and your belt. Okay, so let's see. When I sit up and I lower onto my back, my bolster is underneath the back of my pelvis. So what's on the very edge of the bolster is going to be your tailbone, okay? So you do want to be pretty far forward, like you're about ready to sit down in front of the bolster, just about. And then when you lower back, let's see if I can touch the wall. I can just barely touch. So I think I'll scoot my bolster down, scoot myself a little bit downwards, and I'll be able to manifest that. Okay, see if I can do that. But first things first, take both feet to touch the wall if possible. If you're not touching the wall, it's okay. Another thing you could do if you don't want to touch the wall, it feels too much on the knees, like you start to hyperextend, is you could put a folded blanket under your heels, just right next to the wall. That's another pretty good option too. It's option 2. Okay, take your belt and let's get a big loop going here. The only negative to having a long belt is to get it connected here. Okay, so once you buckle it up, try to make it quiet. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so the hip flexor, right? We got this nice bridge position. It is a bridge pose. All I use is a bolster under me, and I've got a reasonable weave of stretch here in this weave of connectors, flexors. Okay, so I want you to keep that left foot down to the wall. Now, if again you're not close enough or you feel like it's hyperextension, you can scoot your bolster down. Just kind of play with that. everyone's a little different on how their length of their torso is. We are different. So you might find your bolster a little farther up works good for you too. Okay. So I want you to take your belt under your right foot, lift up the foot, let the belt hold on to the loop, and then get a sandbag and muscle it on over to the left thigh. Place it at the top of the left thigh, right at the attachment here. So I do want to feel the thigh. You know, and again, this is one where if you feel like you're hyperextending, sometimes walking your foot a little bit up the wall is good, or you could have a blanket under your heel. Okay. A block would be probably too high under the heel. Okay, so as I add that, I decide if I want my sandbag a little diagonal on my thigh. And then as I get a hold of my belt, yeah, it's pretty good size loop, needs to be a little bit bigger. And I'm going to place the belt at the back of my head. Now, the occiput is probably, it's just it's one point of contact with the belt, right? It's the shelf at the back of your head. But I think most people have their belt a little higher than the occiput. So if I was to curl my fingers to the shelf, if I put my belt there, it would probably slide to my neck personally. So for me, it's where it's really bulky at the back of my head. I can really feel kind of the brain bulge. Maybe that's what it is. Okay, and then that hamstring is just having a delightful time getting situated here. So the leg is upside down, should be vertical, or almost, right? Mine is a little bit back, it looks like. Yeah, so this is one benefit to looking in your screen sometimes at yourself, just to see if you do have your video, to sometimes see how you are with the verticality. I suppose you could do that anytime, right? If you just put your camera on and see how your lift is with your leg, that would be something to do for your own alignment. It's important to have it up, not to have it too far back here, not to have it too far forward. So feel is everything. If you have the belt a little bit loose, that's okay. Maybe that's going to serve me better here. A little bit looser belt. Yeah, I like that neck traction. Open the arms. Let your spine start to settle into this new possibility of traction, especially that upper back. We do a lot in our lumbar stability in this class, in our thoracic, but the cervical sometimes gets forgotten a bit. So let that upper vertebral segment, maybe nodding your head a little bit, and then feed into that flow into the right hamstring. Feel the foot kind of push into the belt. And if you're feeling the wall with your left foot, push into the wall. Yeah, this is an interesting flush after we did some standing work, is to just feel the determination of the muscles in the legs. They're pretty determined. And it's good to get some specific awareness there, since they get us around during the day or in our dreams. Okay, now let's go one side and then right into the next, and then we'll reflect on the two. So we'll take our sand. I like to put it on my abdominal base. I feel like it's a little awkward, so I will do that on this one, just to give it a moment to feel. So and the reason I like to do that, the reason is I tend to really push my torso up when I change, and so the sand keeps it kind of centers it down, keeps the muscles where I want them to work on this shift. So when I shift to the other leg down, you're likely, if you're touching the wall, you're going to notice some differences in your length on the parts on the hip flexors. You'll feel all kinds of interesting differences. So try it up, but this sandbag on my belly does not feel good after my leg goes down. So push the sand down to that right leg. Feel if it goes closer to your knee, if that is something that's friendly for you. If it's not knee friendly, don't do that. If the second side you go, wow, my heel doesn't touch, that's interesting. So use this as an opportunity to get some balance. So maybe you have to shift a little bit so your foot, your whole foot is at that wall. Even if you got a little bit of a baseboard, it works pretty good. I like that. Now I can really tell the differences. Can you imagine you're different on one side to the next? How could that be? That's just not fair. So the right foot should be toes up. If it's pivoting out, well, that's the benefit of the wall, right? And you might want to peek up and look over, but that's a lot to look over. Okay. Ooh. This is definitely alignment trending here, trying to keep it alive. So again, leg not too far overhead, not a good thing for this one. We want to promote that lower back strength. So if I have my legs straight up and down, I kind of have that lower back musculature kind of engaged. It's definitely engaged here with the bolster supporting. It's comfortable. My mid body is trying to create that length. My arms could be open, they could be behind me, besides me. You could let them lift up on the bolster. Yeah, I don't think holding the leg is the best thing, like pulling it. You are trying to negotiate this little thread that's holding you upside down. Right, so if your knee tends to twist in, this is a great one to work on knee health. Keep it straight up and down. Take a few more breaths here. And we can make this practice a little more relaxing, huh? Some of it a little intense today. Okay. You now bring some focus to the left upper outer hip. Right, so this is a place we had the ball earlier. We were kind of massaging into it. And this probably sparks up some interesting communication on inner thigh, to the back of the thigh, around to the left hip. Okay. The sparks might not be flying out of your hip, but there's definitely some circulation that starts to blend from the leg group, left leg group. Okay. Now let your head lean back. So let the brain rest back in the belt. I know the hamstring just loves that, huh? So take a hold of the belt with your hands and slide it off the back of your head. Head down on the blankets, or the blanket, only one. Okay. So right hand holds the belt. Your sand will fall off on its own. Let the left leg cross over. So this area that you probably had some spark of sensation, we're kind of flushing that out. If the sand is bugging, you just push it. Okay. So cross the leg. It doesn't have to go that far. You might have a wall next to you and you can't go as far as possible, but feel just a specific sense of maybe bending the left knee a little bit. Right? It's going to want to bend again. So feel that little bend of that left knee and that hip, kind of hugging stretch. Okay. Come back up center. Change. Let's have both feet out in the belt. So feet both up. Push them out. Let go of the belt for a moment and just let your neck relax. Maybe head nod side to side. You can't really go the head moving up and down on this one, right? So just head movement, circulation. Right, getting that inversion, that reverse flow straight back to my organs, from extremities to pooling the blood back to where it's needed for functioning. And I don't need a bunch of retention at the bottom of my experience my body. That's how I live, right? I live with my brain upwards, feet down. So we're working on enhancing that circulation back to the corridor. And as you bend the knees, just reach up, just easy reach to the belt. Slide the feet together as you pull the belt towards your chest. And then let the left leg lower down. It could touch a wall. It might just kind of faintly push into the wall. Hold the belt together with the left hand and cross the right leg on over to the left. Okay, feel the flexing. You know, you might notice that the leg can go pretty quickly, but the engagement in the foot is, you know, for some people it might be kind of fragile. So there's no reason to go really fast. Okay, we'll get through all the things we need to in this time. So focus on simple and the crossover balance in the hip. So likely you have some differences one side to the next on how you move in your arm muscles to pull, your torso, your back. So internalize, really scan the sensation. I kind of like the foot of the wall for this one. The issue I have is I need to turn my foot out to the left side when I cross the right leg. I can't have the toes up. That's like not a good message into my joints. So I tend to have my foot up on that and I have to guide it to turn out. Okay. All right, bend the right knee as much as you feel comfortable with. Remember, if the foot is pushing into the belt a little bit, you're pulling the belt. You're gonna have a nice muscular kind of engagement. It's all for you, right? It's for supporting your muscles, the seams, the strength. Okay, so as I bend the right knee, right, I'm gonna pull it in towards the chest, then take the left knee up, take the belt off, and then grab your ball. And if you don't have a ball, use a block. If you're using a block, you want it the most narrow. And although probably this block, when it's mid-range, is a little bit bigger than the ball, huh? So maybe you've decided the width of your block. But knees just go side to side with something between them that's a spacer. Now when you cross over from right to left, feel the knees moving towards the shoulder. So they're not going straight out to the hand. That would be troubling. I'd fall off my bolster, but I'm going towards the shoulder. All right. So feeling where the waist has this movement, right? You can move the knees a little bit downwards, away from you as you come back across and up towards your shoulder. It's kind of nice to feel that movement dynamic. Yeah, but really enjoy how the back gets the stretch, especially mid to lower back. Okay, now finalize it with the knees towards the chest. Okay. Don't let the ball hit your head or your nose. But when you slide a little bit back, you're going to find that your lower back has a lot of flexion here. So we're going to go back to what it loves to do is the strengthening. So you're going to push the bolster down. Yep, you might have to reset your pants sometimes on that one. But the bolster is far down, so I like to just barely touch the bolster with my fingertips and then lower my feet on top. So I've got a little bit of work to do to touch down. So you can always push it with your feet too, right? Okay. So you don't want the bolster too close. You don't want it right next to my rib. So when I push down into my feet, I want to feel the heel bones, and then I push into my feet and scoop the tailbone under and lift the hips up. And I'm going to alternate going up and down the spine with either my arms besides my hips, or maybe they go overhead when I lift my hips up, pelvic tilt. This feels good. So feeling that motion from shoulders, waist, spine base into the hips. So kind of cruise through those lanes Taking a couple more. You can always hold at the peak of the pelvic tilt. And then when you lower down, really feel that base, the basement of the spine, right? It's definitely a little more cement-like than the middle and the upper, right? It's thick vertebrae. Okay, now just recognizing that the base of the spine is so thick. So when you come back in with the knees to your chest, take the ball. We're gonna massage lower than the base of the spine, right to the glute again. So the left buttock. Now when you move the hips side to side, just like you did earlier, but now you don't have anything under your back. So you have a little bit more free range into the massage, right? So use pressure and movement to push into that left hip. So get enough push off of the muscles. You might kind of burrow into it a little bit, kind of press and rebound a little bit, that's fine. But when you move it to the other side, you'll have to lift the hips just a little bit and scoot the ball to the right buttock. And keep in mind, if you have the ball pretty high up on the hip, it might feel better. So if I don't have my ball, so it's just right at the buttock area and out to the side, maybe I put a little higher towards the hip on this one. And that might feel good. Some place between the hip, right, and the buttock, where it's definitely got some knots in it, okay? The knots might feel like they're also on your lateral side of your hip, down to your leg side. But we'll get there in the next pose. We'll really help it out. So feature that movement across the glutes, okay? Add a windshield wiper. Bring the ball over to the side, windshield wiper the knees side to side, feet on bolster, and let the feet be pretty wide as the knees swivel, okay? I want you to feel that left leg push the bolster to the right side of your mat. If you've got a bunch of clutter in that side yard, just move it so that you can just pivot the bolster so it's lengthwise on the side of your mat. Right leg down, bend it, and then cross the left leg on top of the bolster, something we're very familiar with. So if I scoot my hip under, like I roll on my hip, it's going to make it a lot easier. So just notice, okay, right leg bending is probably enough. And then as the left leg crosses over, yeah, feel how your left leg has to pull up a little bit to that right side, and then add the ball to the sacrum, okay, a little bit below it, and then find your sand, best part. Okay, sand on the outer left thigh, and place it so it just pushes its way across the thread of the thigh into stretching your hip, okay? Left arm is open, turn the waist to the left side, let your eyes close. Okay, let the breath really weave in here. And feel if you can let a little more body weight relax. The weight of your brain could be centered, and it also could turn either direction. So feeling where there's a helpful amount of weight to the right side of the pelvis, and scanning your sensation in your back. And in this final part of the practice, really influence your awareness with deep breaths. So, and if the breath feels really high up in the body, start to move it a little lower, expansive, and centering back in. So feeling that alternating expanse and release. You know, before we come out to the next side, take a moment longer on this left hip. So you'll move the ball, and as you move the sand to the ground, you know, feel the left knee draw a little closer towards the right side of your body upwards. So kind of pull, and then as you roll on your back, hold that left leg in towards your chest. Bend the knee. Left knee bending fully, and just try to move your right bottom of the foot on the ground so your right foot is in a standing foot position. Lower back is really smoothed out here. It's as back as a back can be. I'm on my back as much as my back can be. Okay, now when I do change sides, I like to really reflect on how much work I did on this left side. I like to get some bonus points in my body. Okay, so when I change, I got to use my hands so to get my bolster, but I just kind of see how long it can land there on the knee bending. I just kind of keep it there. And then as I cross over the bolster to the left side, I'm going to scoot my body onto the right side of my mat a little bit so I got more room to cross. Left leg lowers down. I'm going to keep it creased, so still at my hip joint that I just worked. I don't want to lose that blood flow I got there, so it stays bent. And then I swing the right leg over to the left. That feels pretty good. So my left leg doesn't feel like it lost some of that work I just did. It's not like it's in shock. It's still bending a little bit. So the ball goes to the sacrum, and the sand goes to the side of the right thigh. I laugh because it used to be a topic was nobody in here shocked their sacrum. So it used to be a big topic in training. So I don't forget it either, right? So it's nice to feel kind of the cushioning when you bend things, when you find when the blood flow goes in that area, you still kind of feel that circulation. You don't shock it and come out, whip into a different shape. So cross the right leg to the left side to the bolster, I hope. If you need more height, add another blanket on top of the bolster. And if that's not easy to reach right now, and you need more height, you could put a block under your knee too, right? For some people, this is really nice. There's something about it that feels like a good flow in the joint. So if it doesn't feel good on your knee this way, it's crammed, you can always use a little bit of cushion under it. And the block feels cushiony enough. Right? It's not like you're sitting on the block, it's just under a leg. But the inner thigh might feel a little bit of circulation. Right, you could kind of pull the adductor tissue a little bit up towards the bolster, and then just land on it, and then right arm open. I know you could put a tennis ball there on the inner leg. That would be a little intense. In tennis, turn your head to the right or turn it to the left. Imagine one side you're going to feel like, oh, it really goes this direction. And we got these habits going on. So notice what's a good one, and then one that we might work on in the practice in these last few moments. Let the waist relax with the breath. Open the chest. Now feeling that motion of abdominal, lower abdominal. It's a nice strong connection to the lumbar spine. It's opposite. And feel the nutation of the spine, right? You know, cat-cow, when you arch and you scoop and round, you know, just feel a little nutation of the spine at the base. Just see if that moves at all here. Now you might feel a referred sensation in the armpit when you do that. It's interesting. You might feel none and still be normal. Okay, and so we'll keep the knee in this bend. The right leg stays in a strong bend. All I do is take off the Sand-Aid and push it towards the wall and move the ball. Unless you want to massage your glutes again on the ball, you could before we go upside down. But bring that right leg in and kind of cradle it at the back of the leg. Notice when you cradle it, it does stretch interesting in the mysteriously in the hip, right? It probably doesn't feel a lot of pull for some of us. But then the left leg can bend, place the bottom of the foot down. Just a little push into the left foot seals off the stretch into the right side of the back. Breathing. Now let the weight of this leg, right, drop in towards your right side. I like this kind of thing. Okay, now let's come around to our last pose. Okay, hold on for it. So you can either bring the knees to your chest and roll up, but be courteous to your flexors. So you might roll to your side, push to come up, and grab your blanket and pull it towards the wall. Okay. Take a bolster, place it at the base. If you're doing something different, that's fine, right? If you're going to do like a chair shoulder stand or legs up a chair or legs up a couch or a bed, that's fine. Getting your legs upside down is our finale for our inner world. But we're going to sit on the corner of the bolster. It's probably more important that you're on the corner, okay? And then you're going to put your seat towards the wall and then roll down the shoulder and then swing the legs up, okay? Most of us are going to feel like we're going to fall off the other side of the bolster if we did it right, huh? So some days you got to kind of rearrange. Okay. And so I rearrange my pelvi and I want to feel there's still a lot of boost in your center track of your body. I find that that's something I feel right after class too. I still feel this mid-body kind of boost. So if it feels like, oh, my back is working a lot, give it a little bit of time. Just practice, keep coming back. You know, it does get better. But if it's too much for you to have your bolster under your pelvis on this one, you could do it without anything under your pelvis. It'd be a lot easier to get your legs upside down, but it's up to you. It just increases that circulation, right, back towards your brain and heart. So it intensifies that flush, having something under your pelvis. And it actually makes it an inversion, right, when your hips are higher than the brain. So I place sand on my feet and then I just kind of drop my feet to the wall. Yeah, sometimes it works perfect how the knees have that right amount of separation. Yeah. Go to what you're feeling versus what it looks like, because you know whatever you're wearing is going to probably influence what it looks like, and the feeling is so much more important than the look. So do things to get yourself to feel like you can stay for a few moments here. Maybe you got a blanket to put across your torso. Maybe you have an eye pillow to place across the eyes, or maybe the forehead. Maybe you need some peace there. So considering the option of arms resting down besides you, feel the proper shoulder pressure. So I have to feel my shoulder blades roll down and in on the side, kind of feel them move into the pocket of the blade, and then I let the palms relax, a little curling of the fingers. But what I do really feel is my elbows are kind of tucking towards my body. So that helps me get the blades back. Okay, and some of us, maybe it's less blanket, will help the blades roll under. Then opening gently through breathing down in towards the lower belly. Feel the three-dimensional aspect of the ribs, the breath. That length in the neck. And on these exhalations, feel that it's really, you still are pulling down towards the lifted pelvis. Right? It's interesting. You still have to pursue that movement of breath. And maybe that tugs a bit on gently stretching the neck. Right? Head can be centered or head can nod. Feel the tailbone, then it's gently floating up to the bolster, and then it's really rooted on the bolster. And now, if you've got the sand on the feet, I want you to keep the sand there, but shift your feet so the heels come off the wall. And with that gentle sense of lift, right? Really plug into that weight bearing into the feet, the ankles. If the knees are starting to hyperextend there, do a little kind of micro or nano bend. So a little itty bitty bend. And then it kind of kerplunks the weight back into the top of the thigh into the hip flexors. It's an interesting one though for hip flexors. So feel the tailbone press down so it's not negative there. I don't want negative hip flexors. Okay. So you can tell the feet are really kind of in a stern position, right? They can't do much flipping around. So keep that solid connection at the feet. Start to move them farther away from the wall, farther away, and then bend the knees. You can move your blanket or get a little deep abdominal massage by keeping it there when you bend the knees and reach up to the sand. To the side it goes. Hold the backs of your legs, squeezing, kind of diving back. Okay. And then just roll to the side. Let your hands guide you to come up to sitting. And let's take a moment, just simply bring the attention to our seat on the bolster, the practice that we shared today. Feel the spine in its wonderful arch. So the shoulders maybe touch the wall, but maybe not much of the spine. Okay, the hands meet in front of our heart center, the palms gently press, inhaling together, breathing in wellness, and with exhalations, bowing into that space behind your heart.